Hi, we'd like to thank you for tuning into the World Boxing Review radio show. My name is Aaron Snow. They call me the Hall of Fame trainer of champions. We travel the world for past, present, and future stars. And coming to you live from Tampa, Florida. We're waiting for Mark to tune back in. Let's see if we can get him back on the line. But hey, look, I know it's cold everywhere because it's cold down here and there's snow everywhere, but it ain't. It's snow well time, so we're going to make sure all that happens as we bring you the past, the present, and the future stars. Yeah. Well, Mark Irwin's supposed to be logging back in here. Uh, Hey, Mark, if you log back in, I'm live. If you log back in, you'll be right there.
Okay, I thought I
You
was out.
logged out. No, you kicked yourself out, and we're live on the air right now. So
Okay.
log back in, and everything will be all right. Yeah, as we're waiting for Mark here, there's a lot of things going on in locally here in Florida, in Tampa. Uh, it looks like tonight, Pedro Fernandez is having a card at the um, Banquet Master in Clearwater, Florida. He's having a series of bouts. Peter Fernandez looks like he's back at it at promoting fights, and he's having a series of fights this year along with Ali. So that's the night, and the doors open at 5:30, I do believe. So that's something great. And also Phil Alessi, Jr. here with Alessi's promotion, Friday the 14th with this Valentine's Day at the Tampa Hilton in downtown. It's called Guns and Gloves and Roses. Phil Alessi's putting that show together for Valentine's Day. So hey, man, that's a beautiful thing for Valentine's Day. You get to eat a little bit and watch some fights, watch some boxing. So Gloves and Roses there at on Valentine's Day at the Hilton in downtown Tampa. That's something great to look at. And boy, oh boy, oh boy, things are going real good. And year 2025 looks prosperous. And we're going to be changing gears and adding a lot of stuff on here um, to make sure it's good and it's happening. But as we go here, we're waiting for Mark. We'll get started. Mark was going to talk about today about Jack Dempsey. Jack Dempsey was born in 1895, and he moved around a lot. Dempsey did as a kid with his father. They were in different camps around the country as his family was from West Virginia, so they didn't have much money or anything like that. So they moved around a lot. And we have Mark back in. Welcome into the show. Mark, how you doing?
Good, Aaron. How are you?
I'm doing good. Hey, look, I got started talking about Jack Dempsey, and we want to welcome you into the World Boxing Review radio show. Mark Irwin is the vice president of Rochester Boxing Hall of Fame. He's also vice president of the Buffalo Boxing Hall of Fame, and he is a noted writer for IBOR who collects research and boxing information around the country. Welcome into the show, Mark. How
Well,
you
thank
doing?
you. Thank you. I'm doing good. I'm sorry about the technical difficulties here.
Yeah. Hey, look,
I
it happens from time to time. You're way up there in Rochester, New York, and it must be snowing well up there. The cold weather might have froze the lines, or
I
all
don't
of
know.
these people logging into the show. Things happen when you're streaming, so you got to improvise, and we got to keep going on. So you're going to be able to hear Mark, but you ain't going to be able to see the audio part. So, Mark, I told him I begun to talk about Jack Dempsey, who he was, his birth in 1895. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes, the tail end of the 19th century. He was actually born in Manassa, Colorado, and there's kind of an interesting story behind that. He was well known. Somebody in the media named him the Manassa Mauler. And I was looking forward to showing you. I have a patch from the Manassa, Colorado Police Department, and they have
Hmm.
right on there. It says on their patch that it's the birthplace of Jack Dempsey. It says Manassa, birthplace of Jack Dempsey Police. So the Manassa
Wow.
Police. So they've kind of capitalized on it a little. But he didn't really have a very long time in Manassa. His dad was a rambling man, and they moved a great deal when he was growing up. He never stayed in one place very long. And I came across his original autobiography. He put out a later one called Dempsey, but the first one he put out was actually entitled Round by Round by Jack
Hmm.
Dempsey. And he talked a great deal about that moving lifestyle. They lived in various places in Colorado. They moved back to West Virginia for a time, and back through Colorado. And then finally, the family did land in Utah. His background was Mormon, and that kind of reflects migration that was going on at the time, with the Mormons moving, towards the promised land, which was Utah at the time.
Yeah, well, you mentioned West Virginia. His father, if I'm not mistaken, his father was born in West Virginia. Is that correct?
Yes, his father actually, yes, was a West Virginian and lived there. They converted, him and his wife actually converted to the Mormon church. And that's when the migrating started. He's working his way across the country. His mother was a cook, and actually, in various locations where they lived, started restaurants that were actually did pretty well. People would come for her cooking. His dad, I don't want to call him a ne'er do well, but and Jack was very kind to him in his book, but I think he just was a person that was unable to get used to being settled in one place for very long. And
Yes.
yeah, so as a result, he moved.
As a young man, how did Dempsey start fighting? And didn't he also have some siblings that fought also? If you can get into that, Mark.
Yeah, well, he actually had two brothers that fought. One of them was about, I would say, about 8 years older, and okay, so there's an interesting story with that too. Jack Dempsey, who we know as the heavyweight, the Manassa Mauler, the heavyweight champ of the world, was actually the second major Jack Dempsey that fought in boxing, because there was Jack Dempsey, the non-parial or parallel,
Hmm.
as we would say in American English. He was actually the first recognized middleweight champion. And he was a very kind of a tragic figure. He died young, but he was the first internationally recognized middleweight champion. And he was Irish American, very, very popular. And so it's kind of one of those things I think you have to remember in the teens and 20s. Okay, if you had the last name Dempsey, people would call you Jack, just because that was a famous, like if your last name was Haskell, people would call you Eddie, sure, I'm sure to the dismay of everybody that had that last name. It just is something that follows. So you went into boxing, people just started, your last name was Dempsey, people just started calling you Jack Dempsey. So his older brother, yeah, the one that was 8 years older, fought for a while as Jack Dempsey, as did another brother, came after that. So our Jack was actually the third that fought by that name. But growing up, his name was always Harry Dempsey. His name was William Harrison Dempsey, but his family and friends called him Harry. So that was what, if you had known him during that period of time, you would have known him as Harry Dempsey.
Yeah, but he also had another name. Jack Dempsey did, wasn't it? Kid Blackie.
Kid Blackie, yes, that was
Yeah.
yeah. Well, he had an interesting ethnic heritage. He was Dempsey's a very prominent Irish name, but he also had some Scottish and some Cherokee. Which he always thought accounted for his dark black hair, and you could
Mhm.
see that looking at him. That he had some Indian. He also had some Jewish. His second wife, Estelle Taylor, used to call him Goldberg. So that was her nickname for him. So
Goldberg, huh?
Goldberg, and he was part Jewish. Yeah, and he was very proud of that. He always spoke of it. I think that it was kind of interesting to me that Jack Dempsey was probably not as well accepted or as big of a hero in the Irish community as probably as a lot of other Irish boxers were. And I think part of that was being Mormon. You know, he wasn't an Irish Catholic. He wasn't even an Irish Protestant, really, because Mormons don't consider themselves Protestant. They're kind of their own thing. And
Mhm.
I'm not saying that Dempsey was ever a real staunch practitioner of Mormonism, but he never left it either. He was baptized at age 8, and he always, claimed that as his religion. He was proud of his Mormon background. So,
Yeah,
um,
well, let's talk about when Jack Dempsey when he won the heavyweight title, the heavyweight championship of the world.
okay.
Can you get into that a little bit? Um,
Yeah, I can. The article I was such it was a lot about is pre, and I would like to get back on that subject a little though, because I think you can understand a lot of what built him up to becoming world champion in 1919. He
mhm,
spent. I mean, his dad being from West Virginia, he was familiar. Dempsey was familiar with mining, and he did a great deal of wood cutting and mining as well, which really is where he got his strength from. He, was able to. He became a tremendously physically strong man, and he also began boxing at about the age of 12. And a lot of times, those fights would have to be turned pro fights. I mean, he was fighting for a small purse, and his fame grew throughout the West. He wasn't as well known in the East prior to fighting Willard. But he was actually very well known, in the Midwest, western part of the country. So Willard going into that fight was a heavy favorite. Willard was hit very hard and was really quite a respected champion. Now, in the style of the time, they didn't defend a whole lot. Champions. I think you look back through that era. Jack Johnson, Just Willard, Jack Dempsey really did not defend the title a great deal. But Jack Dempsey was quite convinced that he would take Willard, and actually had a bet riding on it that he would knock him out in the first round. Well, that would have
mhm.
paid off some serious money because Willard was actually the heavy favorite. So if Jack could have knocked him out in the first, he would have made some pretty good coin off of it. But he didn't. It actually Willard rose to his feet after the last of several knockdowns and did actually beat the bell. Jack didn't know. He thought the round was over, or he thought the fight was stopped. He actually started walking out of the ring, and they had to call him back in. Now, under the rules, he probably actually could have been disqualified, for leaving the ring. But, Willard's people didn't push the issue. And so the fight went on until the third round. Well, actually, they fought 3 full rounds, and Willard was very badly beaten up and decided to quit in the corner. And calling it quitting, though, was a disservice to Jess. He hung in there for a terrible beating while it was going
Yeah,
on.
well, yeah, yes, he did, and I want to let you know a little bit of something. Dempsey spent a lot of time in. When you mentioned coal mining, I'm from the foothills of the Pocono Mountains, where Muhammad Ali's training camp is in Deer Lake. But that area is the anthracite coal region, and Jack Dempsey spent a lot of time in Shamokin, Pennsylvania, is just north of Pottsville from where I'm from. He
Okay.
had a gal up there that he used to go up there and see, and sometimes they said he used to venture off into the coal mines of
Hmm.
uh, Pennsylvania there. So, what you're saying, it sounds just like the folk tales there in Schuylkill County of what you're saying. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's really amazing that you said that, because there's a lot of folk tales in that region about Jack Dempsey, and also that July 4th date in 1919 in Toledo, Ohio, when he did fight and win the title. Man, it was just amazing sight. You know, You're
Well, there's a
talking
lot of
about the big gates. Didn't
yeah.
Jack Dempsey, didn't he have some of the biggest first big gates in boxing?
Yes, he did. He actually had the first $1 million gate. Jake Dempsey had a lot of firsts, and I'll go back on that because the stadium where Dempsey and Willard fought in Toledo was actually kind of hastily cobbled together. They put together a
Hmm.
big a stadium, and there hadn't been this was only Willard's second defense of the title. So, there wasn't a lot of heavyweight championship fights there at that time, and Toledo got it. Well, they put together a makeshift arena anyway. And there is kind of a funny story. It wouldn't have been funny if you were there, but apparently a lot of the wood they used had still had sap in it, because it was uh, just recently cut.
Cut.
And
Hmm.
they hastily put together the arena. Well, a lot of the people found out when they went to leave that the sap was sticking to their suits, and men generally wore suits at the time, and they were having trouble getting up from their suits and pants were covered with sap. So, which I'm sure was none of them were probably too happy about.
No, absolutely. But yeah, look, when you look into some of the great fights, that Carpenter fight was also a great fight, right?
Well, I'm sure it was. Now, I was going to get to that. The Carpentier bout actually was the first televised, or excuse, not televised. Excuse me. It was on. I was doing like I'm doing. You were just getting the voice. I was on the radio, and KDKA out of Pittsburgh broadcast it. And they were allowed to operate at a very high, with a lot of power at the time. So KDKA covered a good share of the country. And my grandfather told me he heard it. He said he actually listened to it on a crystal set. So that was the
Wow.
first fight. And that was the first, I believe the Carpentier fight, yes, was the first $1 million gate. Now, there's an interesting backstory to this one, too. Carpentier was served for France in World War One, and he was actually considered quite a war hero. And Dempsey was unfairly criticized for. Was accused of being a draft dodger during World War One. That's actually a false accusation. He wasn't. The draft board just didn't find him. He had moved. He was moving around, fighting, and but he did actually work in a defense plant for a good share of the war. So he was contributing to the war effort. So he didn't. But I think that always hurt him a little that they
Yeah,
made that.
well,
So.
didn't he in what was it? I believe 1952. He did. I think he served in the Coast Guard or something like that. Dempsey did.
Well, he served in the Coast Guard until then. That's another story. Okay, so we're moving along here. Yeah, I was going to talk his life before the championship and after the championship. But going back to the Carpentier thing, the promoters kind of used that, the war hero against the draft dodger, and that was pretty
Hmm.
disparaging to Jack and unfair as well. But nevertheless, behind the scenes, okay, Dempsey and the promoters knew that Carpentier really was a blown up light heavyweight. He really wasn't a match for Jack, but they were trying to build it up, of course. So they
Hmm.
asked Jack if he wouldn't since we had a big crowd, it was the first $1 million gate, if he wouldn't let it go for a little while and, before he took him out. And Dempsey agreed to that. Well, that first round, no problem. Well, the second round, towards the end of the round, Carpentier actually did hit him with a pretty good shot. And I think at that point, Jack, if you know about Jack Dempsey, the man definitely did have the killer instinct. And I think once he got hit, it was so much for carrying George's. He took charge in the third round and then ended it in the fourth.
No, absolutely. Yeah, they said that it looked like the fight was fixed or something, and they said, but Dempsey answered the call to answer everybody's question that it wasn't fixed
Well,
by
there's a
cleaning
lot of
his
myth.
clock.
There's a lot of myth throughout the history. There was a story that's probably some people probably still believe it, that Dempsey's gloves were loaded in the Willard fight, and that can be demonstrably proven to be false.
Yeah,
If
but
there's
didn't Nat Fletcher said what I guess it was Keenan, or his manager or something, the story that he was
uh,
telling. Nat
Actually, it was
Fletcher said he said that it was all of that was absolutely false because he was in the dressing room when Dempsey wrapped his hands and he
100%
witnessed
true.
that.
Yes, it was. Nat Fleischer, yeah, Ring Magazine fame, and he'd be a good subject for another show. Um, he was there and saw the hand wrapping, and he could testify. One thing about Fleischer was he was absolutely 100% about the integrity of boxing, and no, he was there for the hand wrapping. There was no plaster of Paris or any such nonsense as that. It really didn't happen. Yeah, it's a Tex record and Dempsey had a falling out years later, and that's when that started. Record claimed that that Dempsey's gloves were loaded years later, but it's an apocryphal story. It's not true, and
Yeah, well,
I think it's
it
kind of
goes with the with the legend stories that accumulate over time. Stuff changes and stuff happens when events are bigger than life. And Dempsey's events when he was champion were bigger than life. How long did Dempsey stay champion?
okay. About 6 years,
Yeah,
about six
six.
years total. Yeah,
Yeah.
he won the title in 19 and he lost it to Gene Tunney, another Irishman, in
Uh-huh.
1925.
Like 25. Yeah. Yeah, because around 6 to 7 years, I think it was. He won it in 19. And what he started professional boxing, what year? Around 1914, something like that. He started.
Yeah, well, I think that's the earliest bouts that they have for him on record. He actually did have quite a few. Actually, I'm getting that date wrong. It was actually 26 that he lost the title. So he was champ for 7 years.
Yeah, 7 years.
7
Yeah.
years. Yeah, yep. It was 26 because the rematch, yeah, the long count fight was in 27. Uh, but yeah, his earliest pro fights, yeah, the earliest ones recorded are about 1914, but there was actually quite a few more. He won some of them, he lost some of them. Uh, Again, they probably rightfully should be called pro bouts, but I think as far as finding any information other than what he told us in his biographies, I don't think we're ever
So,
too likely to know.
like a lot of fighters of that era, the record keeping wasn't good about those newspaper fights. So it was said that Dempsey had a lot of newspaper fights and newspaper decisions. That's what you're talking about. Expand on that.
Okay. Well, a lot of states, under the rules of the time, a lot of states banned decisions. They just didn't. I think that was an effort to combat gambling. So if there wasn't a knockout, or a stoppage, no decisions were given, and they call that the no decision era. And New York State was actually a no decision state for several years, for a lot of years. So, boxing historians years later started going into the newspaper files and seeing, what the papers said about it at the time. And now a lot of the record books, I think Box Rock will call it a newspaper decision, but they're they're credited as a win or a loss, on their records. And you and I were talking about that before privately, and I don't agree with it. I think you're rewriting history doing stuff like that. I know some would disagree with me. Herbert Goldman used to write for Ring Magazine, was a big advocate of that, and I
Hmm.
just disagree. I disagree. I think that if it was no decision, that's how it should be recorded. It was a no decision fight. And I believe Dempsey total had about 8 no decision fights. But the newspaper decisions, he was credited as the winner in all of them. So,
Hey, y'all that are just tuning in to the World Boxing Review, I like to say we have Mark Irwin, who's vice president of the Rochester Boxing Hall of Fame. And also, he's vice president of the Buffalo Boxing Hall of Fame. He's a noted writer for IBOR, and he's here today, and he's going to be here throughout the year, at least once a month, profiling legendary champions of past, present, or a future star that's in boxing. So we want to tell him that things are going good, even though there was a rough start with the camera and all that. That's why you're hearing the audio. But yeah, he's profiling Jack Dempsey today. Jack Dempsey, who fought, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, from 1914 to 1927, I believe. That's how long he competed. Is that right? Is that
That is
correct?
correct. That's officially the way the record shows it. Once again, I would say that he was probably having his first fights for pay, though, as early as uh, 1907, 1908. Really, I mean, he
Hmm.
was fighting when he was his junior teens. Really, I mean, I would say, according to him anyway, his own recollections, he fought his first fight for a small purse when he was 12. So it actually, he had. But you're right. Yeah, the official, the bouts that are recorded were about 1914. Yes,
Oh,
sure.
okay,
Which would
yeah.
have made him
And
19.
how today, with all of the newspaper champions and stuff, what is his official record? He had over what 80 some fights, I believe.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me see. I can't tell you that one off the top of my head. And I was, uh,
Yeah,
he lost. Well, I go back. I tell you the losses. Obviously, he lost to Gene Tunney twice.
yeah,
Early in his career, he lost fireman Jim Flynn in a first round knockout, and then a short time later, Dempsey knocked him out in the first round. Jim Flynn was a big fighter at the time. Fought Jack Johnson.
yeah.
Yeah,
But they, a lot of people say that, that fight was fixed between him and Jim Flynn, when you know how through
oh yeah,
time people start saying that, but those six losses that Dempsey had, and what he have around about nine draws, I do believe.
yes, he
Uh,
did. Yeah, he
yeah,
did.
we,
He did it 9 draws. Yes. And
yeah.
the Flynn fight, yeah, I'm gonna just take the approach: see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. I uh, I think that it was, yeah. You can't help but wonder if there hadn't
you,
been a little prearrangement there. That Dempsey went down and won, and then Flynn went down and won. Also, too, by going out in the first, you're really not taking a lot of damage, and you're not doing a lot of damage. So, okay, I got it. He actually, to answer your
yeah.
earlier question, Dempsey had 83 official bouts that are recorded,
Okay.
68 wins, 53 knockouts, 6 losses, and it was 9 draws, actually.
Nine
These
draw.
recorded 9 draws,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, yeah. What a fight, man! Fighter, during that time, and it was the man who fought the man that beat the man back there in that days, and to hold that title for that long from, 1919 until he lost it. That's a great defeat in boxing.
Well,
Uh,
it sure is. It sure is. And going back, it was, I would say, interesting thing about Dempsey, and I was talking about, that he wasn't really, the Irish American or the Irish Catholic community anyway, didn't really take him as an idol so much. But after the loss to Tunney, he really did become the most popular sports figure in America, which I think is kind of interesting. He seemed so indestructible to most people, I think, that it was actually losing kind of endeared him to the public to a large degree. So they still, despite of that, they still weren't, even all the time that Jack had been champ, he wasn't guaranteed an immediate rematch with Gene Tunney. He actually had to fight Jack Sharkey, who would later on go on to be heavyweight champion, and was considered about the top contender at the time. And that was actually a very good fight. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it was um, Sharkey. It was pretty close. I think Dempsey was slightly ahead after 7 rounds, but
right.
Dempsey was definitely fouling him. And if you look at it, he was
Yeah, I would say so.
Dempsey was definitely hitting low. Well, he hit on one, very
Yeah.
obvious low blow. And Sharkey, in making a big mistake, he turned to say something to the referee about that. And Dempsey, boy, he had him a right hand that just
Yeah, he nailed him.
knocked
He
him cold,
cleaned his clock.
knocked
Yeah.
him cold, knocked him cold. Well, people said afterwards, well. He just, complained about hitting him when he was looking the other way. And Dempsey said, "What was I supposed to do? Write him a letter?"
Yeah, ain't that something?
He had a
Write
lot
a
of great
letter.
lines. After losing the
Yeah.
first fight, Tony, he said that his wife, seemed quite upset at the sight of him after the fight. He said, "Honey, I forgot to duck." And that line was later used by Ronald Reagan
Yeah.
after the
Yeah.
assassination attempt.
Well,
And
let's you're right up there in Rochester, New York, upstate, right down the road from Buffalo. But Dempsey spent a lot of time in New York City, down in the city, which is downhill from you. Let's talk a
yes,
little bit about his time in New York City.
oh, I
Yeah.
sure would love to. Yeah, he lived in New York. I think that was at the time, when he became famous. After he won the title, he pretty much did settle in New York. I think at that time, and certainly in the United States, that was the place to be. If you were a celebrity, and there was some Hollywood was starting up at that period of time, and he spent some time there as well. But he generally lived in New York, and then
Well, didn't he own a restaurant or
oh
something?
yes, well I was getting to that. He sure did. Yes, I'm sorry I don't have the video here because I had a number of items I was going to show. I had
Right,
I have a few menus, but I also have a book of matches that had like a little pop up Jack Dempsey. Hopefully, again, well, next time we'll have this together and I
right.
can show you all that stuff. But I've got some waitress tabs, and I'm looking at one right now, and it's for two drinks. It says bar on it. I had two drinks. Well, the two drinks were $2.20 with 15
Uh,
cents for tax. So it was 2.35 for two drinks in New York City. So I think you know what that would cost you now. They have a
no question. What drinks in New York's around about $15 is a drink. It looks like, I mean,
yeah.
I don't drink, but that's what people when we go out, it's around about $15 a drink.
And I had also a restaurant tab, and okay, well, listen to the person had there. They had a drink for at the time. The drink was $1.25. Oh, slow gin fizz was what they had, and the dinner they had was lobster tail. Okay, and that cost $9.50. So
Wow.
the total tab was $11.65 for lobster and for lobster and a drink. So but it was a very popular spot anyway. He had a couple of locations. The one people mainly know is the one in the Brill Building. Now the Brill Building is still standing.
Uh-huh.
I actually I do a little I dabble in show business a little, and so I'm familiar with the Brill Building because they still that was kind of the headquarters for Tin Pan Alley back in that era. The Hoagie
Right.
Carmichael era. And so the songwriters used to, try to sell their wares in the Brill Building. There was a lot of offices, music publishers. People did auditions, and that's actually what I was there for. I auditioned for a couple of commercials there in the Brill Building, so I am familiar with it. Because I do live
Didn't you play
upstate.
into some movies too, Mark?
What was
You were
that?
talking about that. Didn't you play in some movies? What are the
Oh
movies you
yes,
played in?
yeah, yeah. I've been in a number. I've been in a number of them. A few of them you've heard of. I was in the second Aquaman. You'd really have to be looking for me, but I was in the Times Square scene in that. I just watched one for the first time. I didn't believe it ever got made. It was called Lazy Susan, and I would have to say it was one of the poorer productions I was ever in. But it did actually get released. I was had did that on Tubi, and I was scrolling through what they had, and I thought, oh, I saw it. I saw Lazy Susan. I thought, wow, that actually got made. And I found it unwatchable, but I scrolled through it to find myself. And you can see me if you. I wouldn't recommend the movie, but you can't see me in it a little. Uh, but did a lot of
Well,
TV.
yeah.
There was a show For Life. I was a core on that. I was, part of the background core on that show. And yeah, and I've done probably over 100, TV shows and movies, and done a few commercials.
Well, now that we're on the TV age during the 1920s in the golden age, this is when television and stuff just start coming into its fruition, and nowhere near what it is today. But tell me, didn't Dempsey play in some films and movies and stuff like that at the time, acting?
Well,
You
yes, he
know.
did. Yes, he
Mhm.
did. The thing about it, I would actually say that Dempsey, I would say Dempsey was actually a better actor than a lot of boxers who tried that.
Right.
Tried to watch the thing Ray Mancini was in one time, and it was tough. I think I did make it all the way through, but it was difficult to
Boom,
watch.
boom.
Uh, Rocky Marciano was in a TV show one time, a drama was Captain Grief, I think it was called, or something like that. Anyway, and boy, it was. I'm sorry. With all due respect to The Rock, it was. It was. I mean, he couldn't act. I'll just leave it at that. I mean, he really, as an actor, he was a very good boxer. We all know Muhammad Ali took a stab at it too, and
Yeah,
uh,
Freedom Road, Freedom Road.
Freedom Road, yeah, the
And
greatest.
Muhammad Ali story. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
greatest as well,
Yeah.
yeah. And he was on Different Strokes one episode, I remember.
Yeah.
Uh, but anyway, Dempsey did. Yeah, he actually played the referee in The Prize Fighter and the Lady with Max Baer, and Max Baer was in it. And Max Baer was actually a pretty good actor. Max Baer actually also has a lot of tie to Jack Dempsey as well. Jack was a big booster of Max Baer's career, and
Uh-huh.
tried to get him focused, and tried to get him because I think as a trainer for you watching Max Baer, looking at his career, it's got to be frustrating to think about, that what that guy could have done if he had put
Yeah.
his nose to the
Got yourself.
grindstone.
Yeah. Really got ready.
He got
Yeah,
ready,
but
yeah,
yeah. Hey,
and then
for fans just tuning in, we're on the last segment end of the show, but we're talking to Mark Irwin, who's vice president of the Rochester Boxing Hall of Fame and vice president of the Buffalo Boxing Hall of Fame, and he is a noted writer and stuff for IBOR, who's the boxing research company. And he's here profiling today. Jack Dempsey. He's going to be doing this once a month. But Mark, before on this last segment, because you're Rochester Boxing Hall of Fame vice president, we had Larry Lallardi last week. But re-announce your class that you have going in for 2025, like because last Wednesday at your monthly meeting, I believe y'all picked a new class for 2025.
yes,
Shit.
yes. Well, we have. I'm actually very excited about it. We have as far as the local, we have Laura Tobish, who is our secretary
Mm-hmm.
and has been was a big part. We had a little battle to keep the club going in about 2013ish, and Laura was a big part of that, as well, fighting to
What
keep
a
the club in
sweetheart.
existence.
Laura is. What a
Oh yeah,
sweetheart.
she sure is. She sure is. She had some health problems, but nothing too difficult for her. She's bouncing back good and looks good, and so we're very excited about that. She's getting the Gino Arlada Award, and we also have Dr. Margaret Libby, who is the fight doctor. She's our Ferdy Pacheco in this area. Boy, I'll tell you. I mean,
But she
amateur
does a lot
boxing.
of amateur
Oh,
and professional fights. She's
sure
always
has,
there.
sure
She
has.
don't miss a fight, does she?
Very seldom. Very seldom. I'll tell you, she didn't used to do everything, and now she pretty much, yeah. If you see fights in Western New York, pretty much anywhere between, yeah, Rochester and probably down to Jamestown, Dr. Libby most likely will be in charge of it as far as being the doctor, and which isn't a requirement by USA Boxing. And I was chief of officials when she first came on board, and so her and I worked together for a long time and
Mhm.
became very good friends. So I'm very pleased about that one. That to me is a long overdue honor. But now
Yeah,
she can,
well deserved. Well deserved for
for the
both of
remainder of
you.
her life, she can call herself a Hall of Famer, and nobody's more of a Hall of Famer than her, in my opinion, Dr. Margaret Libby. So also now of the others, there's still probably be a little few more to come. We haven't decided the Amateur Boxer of the Year yet. It looks like we are going to continue the Carmen Basilio Scholarship. Uh, college Carmen Basilio Scholarship Award. So we haven't decided that yet. There'll probably
Mhm.
be a handful more, but we have of our champions. We have Fatal Freddie Ladd, who was a
Right.
very good contender and a wonderful man. Really, he's just a very he fought. I mean, if you just look up a box rec, look up Freddie Ladd. I think you'd be extremely impressed. He fought who's who from his era, and so we're very excited about. We had him here last year as a guest, actually, and got to know him a little bit, and we're very excited about that. And Michael, second to none, is actually getting inducted into Canastota this year in
Yes, he is.
June. So
Michael's second to none. And Freddie, fearless Freddie, with Freddie Ladd, he's going in the Indiana Boxing Hall of Fame this year too. So he
that's
got
right.
a double dose of that, like Michael Nunn. Michael Nunn's going in the international in the Rochester, so he's getting a double dose.
Well, you said fearless. Yeah, I was saying because I always was fatal Freddie Ladd, and it's funny that when you talk. I mean, he's such a nice man. I mean, he's somebody that it seems like fatal. That nickname almost doesn't seem to follow with him, but he was all business in the ring. So.
Yeah, yes, he was. Yes, he
And
was.
Michael Nunn, yeah, very happy about that. I'm just glad to see it. In fact, I met, I think it was the first time you may have actually had a hand in introducing me to him, too. I met him in
Yeah,
Indiana because Larry and I came a couple
yeah.
of years ago.
And then up
And
at the international, when all of us were together up at the International Boxing Hall of Fame, when Michael Nunn was up there, we were together with Michael
okay.
Spinks and all of us. You remember that nice
Yeah.
picture
What year
all of
was
us
that?
took? Yeah, yeah,
What year
yeah.
was that? Do you remember?
That was 2 years ago.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, probably was then. I don't remember if I met him first in Indiana or in Canastota, but it was, but again, I'm
Yeah,
looking
I
forward
have the
to it.
picture with all of us in that picture. Michael Nunn, Michael Spinks, myself, Flo, Larry Lazardi, yourself, quite a few people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Fritz, Fritz is in that picture. He's in there.
That's the Web
So
Vanderpool. Yep. Well,
yeah, yeah,
Fitz is a very big man in Rochester. Comes over from across the border from Canada, and I'm sure he'll be there this year. He's a very good speaker. He's very entertaining.
yes, he
It's
is.
our audience loves him. It would be hard to imagine the dinner without him being there, really.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
topping us off, of course, was well. I'm not putting any order on any of them, of course, but we also have Henry Tillman, gold medal winner for the
Yes, he
United
is.
States, man who kept Mike Tyson out of the Olympics, actually.
Yes, he
Uh,
did. Yeah. Well, and he's getting a double dose of the Hall of Fame. He's going into the National Boxing Hall of Fame this year in April. So
okay.
he's going to April, September, Rochester, and September 20th. To my understanding, is your date that you're having. And you pushed it, you bring it back a little bit, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, last year, that November last year was kind of an aberration because we couldn't get the banquet hall. They actually just had
Uh,
it booked up prior to that. We might be having a different location this year. We're not 100% sure. In fact, I think I'm going to be seeing Larry a little later today and
mhm.
to discuss that. And but the other location, if we do go there, it's very nice as well. You'll like it. Very easily accessible. But anyway,
As
but
long as
we
that food is as good as last year. That
well,
food, that
but
food was dynamite. That was
well, Red
it was
Fidelli does
dynamite.
a great job. Does a great job. Fideli's
Okay.
been, they've been involved with the Rochester Boxing Hall of Fame for years, and so yeah, we think an awful lot of Fideli's. So we'll see how it goes. There's nothing we've had in several different locations through the years. That's not a biggie. But anyway, we're very excited about this year's class, and I don't know of anybody that we've ever honored that didn't want to come back. I think everybody always enjoys it, and because we try to turn it into a full weekend. We try to go from Friday to Sunday. Sunday is usually getting out of town, but we've had a few. Stayed a little while Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
We take
What
them
a
around.
great time. So,
Well, thank
for
you.
the boxing fans, you heard the Rochester Boxing Hall of Fame, the class of 2025. So you heard that they're going to be inducting some more, but they released uh, their basically their main class. They have some amateurs and stuff that are going to be voted in. So, hey, man, Rochester's Boxing Hall of Fame is keeping their tradition alive where it looked like it was going to perish and they saved it. Mark here, they saved it when it was supposed to be, looked like it was going to disperse. Larry Lazardi was president, and Mark and those guys, they put their heads together and they saved a boxing Hall of Fame where people were trying to dismantle it. And that's your love and dedication, Mark. We want to thank you for doing that. It's
Well,
just a bright thing to do for a good
well,
organization.
I appreciate it. Yeah, for me personally, it is a great organization. It's been a big part of my life, and I was inducted in 2007. My award's actually sitting right behind me. I was gonna when I thought we were gonna have audio or video, excuse me, I would have showed it to you. And
Yeah.
but we do that in the future. I'm sure we'll get this
Oh
problem
man, we got
settled
many
now.
days in front of
Yes,
us. We'll
yes.
we'll we'll, we'll get everything worked out. Something new, something excited, and I'm glad that you joined the team in order to bring this to the boxing fans. To bring this type of information of past, present, and future stars like we do. But before we close with Jack Johnson, I just want to make people aware again is that in Tampa um, tonight at the banquet master in Clearwater, Peter Fernandez is having a fight card there tonight. Doors open at 5:30. And then on Valentine's Day, Phil Alessi, and with Leslie's promotion on Valentine's Day at the downtown Hilton in Tampa, it's Gloves and Roses. He's having an event. So, hey, man, you can take your darling, your wife, your sweetheart, your best buddy, or whatever, and romance and all of that, and see Night of Boxing. What a great uh, thing to do, Gloves and Roses. And then we look down the road with Shields on the zone, the Zills and Perkins for the female heavyweight championship. As you know, Carissa Shields, she's have won it all, and she's moving up to the heavyweight division in the WBC, WBA. All of those belts are on the line when she goes into Perkins to see what she can do moving up in weight class. I think that's a great matchup. February 15th, that fight is happening. And then um, the 22nd, you have that big card over in Saudi Arabia. You have the Boers and Parker going against each other on the Bevo and Belvo card in Saudi Arabia with Turk Al Sheikh putting a massive card together February 27th. It looks like it's seven world title fights that are going to be on that card. So February looks like it's going to take off like a rocket, and we're going to see something exciting. And I don't want the boxing fans to forget for Black History Month, February 22nd at Muhammad Ali's training camp. Now, the fighters have, and we'll be putting on Black History Month program in honor for all of those who paid the price, the former champions that may not have gotten recognized and things like that during this month at Muhammad Ali's training camp. Mike Madden is the owner of it, and Mick Stefanik is the camp manager, and they restored it. And we have gotten it put on the historic roster for the Thriller in Manila and the Rumble in the Jungle. And boy, we're feeding everybody. So that's something to come to and something to look out for, man, in the month of February. But we're coming right back down here out of Tampa and Rochester, New York. We're going to finish it up here with Mark Irwin with Jack Dempsey. In closing, what do you want to say, Mark?
Okay, well, we kind of got we were talking about Jack's career, his career, and I think that Probably the fight that people remember most was the rematch with Tony. And that fight was, interestingly enough, Tony was dominating it by a pretty good margin. But in the seventh round, Dempsey really landed a shot on Gene and put him down. And they had a neutral corner rule in effect, which was a relatively new thing to boxing. And of course, everybody knows the story. Dempsey kept, going towards him and charging at him. So the ref didn't start the count and blah, blah, blah. And Tony got about 14 seconds to recover. So they always called it the long count fight. It's always interesting to me, and this is what I would like to close with. Dempsey always maintained about that he knew that was his fault. And he also said that he always knew that Tony, would have beaten the count within, he would have actually, if they started it, he would have gotten up before 10. And he said, so as a result, he said, there was a fight that this is him talking now. He said it was a fight that I was losing badly, but yeah, it was remembered favorably to me, because of the controversy. He said, so he was always grateful for that, because he said if it hadn't been for that, he says it just would have been, a fight that he'd lost on a decision. So that worked out for him. Him and Gene Tony went on to become very good friends. In fact, Dempsey was actually friends with most of his opponents throughout the years. So I think he gives a very good example for us. He was a champion in the ring and a gentleman outside of it. Jack Dempsey.
Absolutely, Jack Dempsey, man. And Mark, man, great job, man. We want to thank you for profiling Jack Dempsey. What a heavyweight champion in the 1920 era, when boxing was really alive during that in that era. But thank you so much, Mark Irwin, for doing that profile of Jack Dempsey. And we want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in to the World Boxing Review radio show. My name is Aaron Snowell. They call me the Hall of Fame trainer of champions. As we travel the world for past, present, and future stars. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you. Good night.
All right.